Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. President Trump yesterday signed an executive order the White House says very well could reshape federal elections. Of course, elections are conducted state by state here in this country. The sweeping order, which will inevitably face numerous legal challenges, would, among other things, require proof of citizenship to register to vote, seeks to mandate that all U.S. ballots be received and counted on Election Day. That's not how we do it now. Joining us now, Scott MacFarlane. He's our Justice Department correspondent, and David Becker, CBS News election law expert and contributor. He's also the executive director of the Center for Election Innovation and Research and the co-author of a mighty fine book called The Big Truth. You can check out and find out who the other co-author is in your leisure hours. David, you know this space very well. This executive order runs many, many pages.
10 pages. Requiring
lots of things, stipulating things that are flawed in our system now, that are openings to rigging and illegality. What's your takeaway from it?
So putting aside whether there's any justification for any of these massive changes, we should remember the Constitution has something called the Elections Clause, and it says the time, place, and manner of elections is left to the states and the legislatures of the states. And when Democrats have tried to push massive election overhauls like H.R. 1 in 2021, Republicans raised an uproar, said this is a federal takeover of elections. This is, in many ways, even more radical. It's an attempt
because it doesn't go through the legislature at all.
Not at all. He did it with a swipe of a pen. It seeks to force states to impose vast new bureaucracies around their voter registration systems. It may require states to change all of their election technology. It probably comes with a price tag of about tens of billions of dollars just eyeballing at what this would require. It's a massive overhaul, and of course, it has no congressional authority behind it.
And it says that there's some fundamental problem in our country with mail-in ballots arriving after Election Day. Quite a few states do that.
And have done it for decades, if not, centuries. I mean, we've had mail ballots since before the Civil War. There are many states ranging politically from California to Mississippi that allow ballots that have been relinquished on Election Day. In other words, the person has no more control over it. They've cast the ballot, put it into a mailbox or something like that, but maybe have a few more days for it to arrive. And importantly, federal law also requires that ballots that come in from uniformed and overseas citizens, people who are serving the United States overseas, be allowed to come in after the deadline as well. So I think that's a potential problem with this. And of course, it seizes that power from the states.
One other quick thing. This executive order name checks India, Brazil, Germany, Canada, and Denmark and Sweden for having all these super simple applications for their voting procedures. Help us understand the context.
Well, it's interesting because I don't know if they fully understand what's happening in all of these countries. These countries have different election systems, different voting systems, much simpler ballots, usually one race on a ballot, whereas I was just in Arizona, 85 races on the Maricopa County, contests on the Maricopa County ballots in 2024. Also, interestingly, he points to the importance of paper ballots, even though we have about 98% of all voters voting on paper ballots. Countries like India don't have paper ballots. Countries like Brazil don't have paper ballots. There's some disconnect here in what's actually happening.
Scott, how has this been received among secretaries of state that you've talked to?
Yeah, we've heard from some Democratic secretaries of state, including in Pennsylvania, where they said this is an overreach. No matter your thoughts on what's being proposed here, that this is a state and local function, lawsuits aren't just inevitable. I think the lawsuits are imminent. This is going to come up and be challenged in front of the courts.
On constitutional grounds.
On constitutional grounds. But I think there's something more pernicious than this. No matter whether this stands up to the test of the courts, there's concern from sources about this planting of seeds of doubt and distrust in the 2026 election. We've seen this playbook before, and it ended up in violence and an instability in America after 2020. And this does sow distrust, 20 months before the next big test in federal elections, whether Democrats get some control back in Congress.
And David, it's worth reminding ourselves that the swing states that the president justifiably points to pride with conducted themselves in some of the exact same ways that he, in this executive order, suggests are nefarious.
Look, we have paper ballots. We have checks that the states are actually checking on.
North Carolina, the ballots arrive after Election Day, and they're counted.
And he won that state. That's quite right. And we have checks against non-citizens voting. Even Republican and Democratic states have looked for them. They found precious few. Ohio found only 5 potential non-citizen voters over the last 15 years that were would be even subject to prosecution. So this is just proof that our elections have been doing remarkably well under all of this scrutiny, even court scrutiny, and have stood up.
And Scott, one thing I did see in the executive order, it's very deep in there, you have to look for it, is they want the Attorney General and the Department of Justice to make sure election officials are not being threatened or intimidated. It's good to see that there, because that's been going on for the better part of 4 years.
You'll also see in the executive order this potential of stripping funding away from states that don't
For non-compliance.
Yeah, that can get pernicious if misused, and if this is the law of the land, in quotes, it's going to be for the next president and the next president to have that type of power is quite something.
Scott MacFarlane, David Becker, thank you very, very much. I appreciate it.